I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been in the field about a little over 24 years. I first started out in residential treatment with teens and adolescents, and then I worked also in a correctional facility, drug and alcohol treatment center, but then gradually shifted to doing outpatient counseling for the last probably 20 years.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to thank you for another episode of One Moment Podcast. My name is Joshua Evans. I'm here with Kevin Odom and Ms. Jennifer Mullowney today. Hoping to kind of discuss some topics related to mental health. Trying to dive a little bit into like some couples counseling, answer some questions you may have out there, things of that nature. But yeah, I always like to let our guests kind of introduce themselves, tell them about themselves, because you know way more about you than I do. So yeah, if you would, Miss Jennifer, please tell me about yourself.
Sure. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been in the field about a little over 24 years. And I first started out in residential treatment with teens and adolescents, and then I worked also in a correctional facility, drug and alcohol treatment center, but then gradually shifted to doing outpatient counseling for the last probably 20 years. And so I started out seeing kids and adults, couples, families, individuals, and now I'm in solo practice where I see adults and couples, adults 18 and over and couples. And I love it. I do telehealth since COVID. And yeah, that's what I do.
Awesome. So kind of a little bit more teens and adults to begin with, but then kind of shifted more towards adults and couples a little bit later on in your practice. Just
Exactly.
to kind of,
Exactly.
was there a reason behind that shift, or is it just something
You
you
know,
found population you working with, or?
Yeah, it kind of happened organic. It's funny. When I after I had my kids and I started to work a little bit more part-time, now I'm getting back into full-time because they're older, but teens are really hard to schedule for counseling. They're busy,
Yeah.
and so it was kind of like when I was working full-time before, I could get more teens in, but it just kind of happened where my availability and theirs didn't line up. And so occasionally I'll get, a referral for someone. And if they're close to, 18, I might take them. But yeah, that's just kind of how it happened. And I found that I really, there was a time when I liked working with teens, but then as I got older, I thought, I'll shift more towards adults. It kind of just felt more natural, I guess.
Yeah, kind of everything shifted, and you're kind of like, let me kind of focus in on this.
Yeah, I wasn't up on the lingo as much.
Yeah, language does change quite often.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
kind of recycled too. So.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, listen, you are absolutely right on that language changing. We were talking about the other day. There was a graduate, okay, who was doing this grad kind of like a some type of discussion, right? Where he was like
Okay.
the main person talking at the graduation. I don't know what
Yeah.
they call it nowadays. But at the end of it, the professor got up there and said, there's a lot of stuff I don't know what you said, and I'm gonna need a dictionary for that.
It's true.
Because he was talking some weird slang and lingo, and I'm like, when he would use context, you would be able to understand. So I could
Sure.
understand
Sure.
there's a lot of language barriers between our generation
yeah.
and these new ones coming up.
Definitely. Even when I work with college kids, they'll read me their texts or they'll say things and like left me on red or read, and I'm like, yeah. So even that I have to go like time out and get a tutorial, or I'll just ask, some younger kids I know.
Yeah, I'm curious, how did that help as far as building that therapeutic relationship, though? Kind of like help me understand this language.
It's funny. Most are really willing to let me know. If you do it in a way that, I'm not, I don't judge. So I'm like, okay, is this kind of the same thing as like what I would have said back in my day. And they kind of laugh. It kind of, breaks it up a little bit. Maybe puts them more at ease.
Yeah, so non-judgmental, more just kind of lost. Just
yeah,
kind of,
they don't have a loss. Like
yeah.
I'm on the other side of 40, so
Help me help you.
I don't have,
please.
yeah, I don't have, and so I have nieces and nephews that are, in their like mid-20s, and I'm like, could this be it? If I didn't catch something or whatever, because texting is a huge, when I started, texting was not as big, but that's how everybody communicates nowadays.
Yeah.
So that's been a change too.
Yeah, it's more like almost more serious now when you get a phone call from
Yeah,
someone.
exactly. Like, what's wrong, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you get 2 or more phone calls, something
Right.
drastic has happened in life.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
Exactly.
So I do have a question there, because we are on the
Mhm.
teens and the language differences, right? And besides that being a barrier, what did you find? Because I think this is a huge one. Even I struggled with it when I was in outpatient, practice
Mhm.
myself. And I know, you, Josh, you're fixing to start your intern, so I think this is going to be kind of key or critical for not just us, right? But even people out there that's in their grad training. Because and let me emphasize, I definitely want to go to couples counseling, because that's the
Sure.
beef of the story, right? What did you find besides the language barriers, right? What else
Mhm.
did you find were barriers or challenges to serving teens, or what do you find currently?
Yeah, even when I was younger, and I was in my 20s working in the residential with teens, I would have to remind, especially, teenage girls, that their moms or their aunts or other, or even, boys too, with their dads or family members or whatnot. But even myself, like I was a teenager once. Like I get it. I get the girls can be mean. Like girls are mean at 13. It's rough. And so they would kind of look at me like I'm not. It's things change and fads change, but like being a teen, the basics of that, like with girls, mean kids, or boys, maybe feeling like they're, a little bit lost or whatever it is, trouble with teachers, grades, like all that stuff hasn't changed over the years. Fighting with your parents, um, and so I would really, that would sometimes be a hard connection, like we, but it would also be good because eventually they would see like, oh yeah, maybe they do get what I'm saying, that I'm not feeling, it's not just me. But that sometimes would be a barrier too.
Yeah, kind of the storyline might have changed, but the context is still very much the same.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's kind of shift to the couples.
Okay. Sure.
I can understand kind of evolving into more adults only client, or that's kind of where you wanted the target population you wanted to
Mhm.
have. But as far as couples, how did that come in, and what's different versus individual counseling?
So couples, when I first started, I think I was just a little too young, too naive. You need some more experience. I needed some supervision. A lot of therapists will go to like group supervision even now, or with other therapists to kind of talk about cases. In addition to what you need to kind of get your licensure. So I felt like I needed some more experience because you have this relationship where the goal is, individual therapy. I tell people like the goal can be really anything the person wants. But in couples therapy, it's going to be the preservation. It should be everyone's on the same page of the preservation of the relationship. If that's not the goal, there's really not a point in doing it. And so I think I needed that additional training to get into it. That said, I don't work. I maybe will have like 3 or 4 couples at a time because it can be challenging working with couples. So I don't want to have like 10 couples would be too much in a caseload for me
Okay.
anyway. So um, but you can't do some of the things with couples therapy, if there's any kind of like domestic violence, addictions, or abuse, you can't do couples counseling. So the partner the other person would have to get help for that. And that's something. But I think the biggest thing that people don't realize is, it's not a last resort. A lot of couples will come in and say, like, we tried everything. And I think that if couples realize, like, you come in earlier when you start to see the problem starting, because sometimes there is that point of no return where there's one partner that's, their partner is trying to maybe hold on, or they're at a different place, and the other partner is like, they got one foot out the door. So it really helps to come in earlier and not treat it like, okay, this is our last step, if that makes sense.
No, it definitely does. Instead of going to the point where it's like, I don't know what else to do. Like, do we need counseling or do we need a lawyer? Versus like,
right.
if you hit that before it got to that stage, like, okay, like we've tried a couple of things. This doesn't work. This doesn't work. You know what? Like maybe we should have somebody come in and kind of help us professionally, kind of,
right.
work better as a unit together.
Exactly. Yeah. Just, at the first, when you feel like, okay, we've tried this, it's not working, or we're not, before you get to that point where, you feel like, okay, do we need an attorney? And I always tell folks, like, you don't use the D word when you come into couples therapy. Like, we're going to put the D word away. We don't do ultimatums. So, those are some of the, there's some of the, I guess, rules, I'll say, of couples counseling that I've had, over the years. Because you're really working to preserve the relationship. And another big one is, like, you don't want to overshare with your family and friends, because if you can forgive your spouse, they don't have to. That can create a barrier, so you want to, kind of at the beginning, kind of put like a hedge around yourself, and, because like I said, your family and your friends would have to forgive that person. And if you end up working, if you work it out and stay together, you want your support network to respect that, not have it obviously be awkward.
Eyes looking at you like, are you serious?
Yeah.
We're going to do this again? That kind of thing. Because once again, they're only getting one side of it, but also
exactly,
they might think that you deserve quote unquote better, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
Like,
sure.
Yeah. And so they're like, they're looking at it from a perspective, not of.
Right. They're looking at it from their loved ones, for their friends, right. Yeah.
Trying to protect that loved one. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's hard to try to, I always say, like, keep it in the four walls of the office, or or when it's telehealth, there are four walls, and not, you don't want to fight about things afterwards. Like, you want to keep it there, work on the homework. And that's why you need that commitment, because when you get the homework, you both have to do the homework. And someone doesn't do the homework, it's really it's not going to work.
Yeah. The work is,
no matter what the modality is of the therapy.
So listen, question for you, because you spoke something that I think is a myth, right? Not saying that you spoke a myth. No, it's a myth, right? It is challenged, and it oftentimes is a myth. And I think, Josh, you could even agree to this. You mentioned there's domestic violence going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Substance use, things like that. I have read quite often than not, is engage in couples counseling, right? And push them straight toward couples counseling. And you said it, right? That if there's domestic violence or substance use, they need help first before they just jump headfirst into couples counseling, right? And so, and you started talking about a little bit about what, when you do couples counseling, you can't just have one person that's way over here and another person that's, okay, let's do couple counseling, right? Both of them need to be on the same page. So what do you feel like, or what have you experienced or maybe seen, do you feel like is a barrier to people coming into couples counseling before it's too late?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if sometimes people need, even if it's not, if they don't have the three things I mentioned, like domestic violence, addictions, or abuse, sometimes they'll have their own issues they're working through. And so it can be really hard. You have to, as a therapist, you have to be neutral and not you don't want, certainly somebody might feel like you're taking the other person's side. And I'll tell couples, like, it may seem like I'm agreeing, and I may be agreeing with them because of how they're feeling, but I'm not saying they're right. And you shouldn't go, well, Jennifer said, I was right. Like, that's not the point of it. But you don't want it to also turn into an individual therapy session. So it's possible that, the person maybe needs to do individual work while they're also doing couples work with a different therapist, to kind of process, maybe it's depression or anxiety or something was challenging at work for them or whatever it is. And it's coming in, you can talk about as far as the marriage goes, but it can't be the sole focus. So sometimes that can be a little bit tricky and like weeding that out a little bit. Because it's part of it's part of their relationship. Like I always say, if your partner has an issue with something, it's an issue in their relationship, right? You can't, but at the same time, you don't want it to bleed too much into the work you're doing with the couple. Because, ultimately you're finding a way either maybe to help them strengthen their emotional bond, reconnect, spend time together. And so, that's really kind of where the homework's more going to be, working out, the goals they have together for their relationship.
Imagine a day where fatigue doesn't stand a chance, where clarity perks up your focus as the clock ticks on. Discover W Energy, the drink that transforms ordinary moments into opportunities. With no sugar and flavors that feel like gourmet art, each sip stirs your senses, readying you for greatness. W Energy is a focus energy drink that contains no sugar and is available in a variety of unique flavors. Their coffee fruit cherry extract is the star of the show. This ingredient is what makes W unique and helps to provide smooth and effective focus and energy, making it perfect for anyone who needs to conquer a task. W flavors are created with one goal in mind, to taste unlike any other beverage. We combine bold and unique flavor combinations to craft an experience for your tongue with each sip. W achieves its smooth, effective focus with a high-end tasting experience while using no sugar, no fillers, and no artificial color or dyes. Every product they create follows the same philosophy. Be effective, be clean, and taste as good as nature will allow. Use promo code ONEMOMENT to enjoy 10% off their products. And most importantly, they sponsor the One Moment podcast. They are helping to raise awareness of mental health, substance use, suicide, and much more around the world, seeking to make a global impact, reducing stigmas and changing lives one moment at a time. Visit onemoment.chain.box to learn more about our podcast, follow us on our social media channels for more information, and to stay up to date with our episodes.
I have really kind of two questions.
Sure.
One, how much, since we are focusing on the couple as one unit and working together to essentially promote healthy boundaries, healthy behaviors in that unit, how often do you either work on communication, and also how often do you kind of see that either she's taking sides or essentially blaming each other?
Yeah, communication's a big one. So a lot of times, people just kind of can get into a rut with communication. And you got to communicate about everything, no one's a mind reader. And people say, we've been married for so long, or we've been together for so long. It's like, you can't read each other's minds. If something is bothering you, you need to speak up. If you want something out of the relationship, you need to speak up, So if you feel like you're not getting something, and so that's a big thing too. And so I'll tell couples, everybody's busy, right? So it's like, you might have to set a time to check in with each other, whether it's like you want to spend more quality time together, whatever, because, those things, you have to make each other a priority to do that. And you may even have to schedule a time to talk about it. And I know sometimes people think, well, it should just happen naturally, or I should get to a point where it doesn't have to be this hard, but you get married for 50 years, it's going to be work, There's never going to be a time when someone says like, oh, I'm just coasting along. There's no coasting, you start to coast, that's when there's danger, a little bit.
Okay. Can you kind of tell when there's that like one member's coasting or just not all the way into therapy, like as far as the outcomes?
Sure. So if they're not doing the homework, if they're not really participating or sharing, if they're just kind of, they're just kind of like, okay, sure, I'm just here. So I might, have to draw that, try to draw that out. Why did they agree to come? Like, what is it? And maybe start there, and it can take a while. It's not something, a lot of times the first session, even with individual therapy, can just be, if the person, especially they've been waiting to talk or they've been holding it in, just feels like this like eruption, like, and so I said, you got to give it some time, like everybody, equal, I'll give each person in the room equal time to talk. Everyone's going to get their, it may take 2 sessions to do an intake, and that's fine. And then we can, go from there. But yeah, it can be difficult to try to engage someone who's not really, and I've had that happen. They're not an active participant. They're showing up. So, but I never want to assume just because they're showing up that this is what they want. I want to make sure like you're okay with this. But the other person can't do it for both of them. They need to want it, need to show, show something that this is what they want, make some kind of effort.
Okay, so I have just kind of more my own personal curiosity right now.
Sure.
So I have like very limited training in group counseling, essentially just enough to satisfy K-CREP, and have even less than that of couples counseling. Like, what is the difference between the two?
So group therapy, I haven't worked with groups in a while. You can do, your process groups where you're more like the facilitator, if that's maybe like a grief and loss group. Like when I worked in addictions, we would have like a process group where people would just talk about what's going on with them. And you're, like I said, you're more kind of sitting back as like a facilitator. And then you can have groups where it's more like psychoeducation, where you're maybe presenting on something, whatever the topic is. And it's not as free flowing, I guess. Obviously they're participating. Groups can be, when I worked with groups, it was where they were like maybe 20 and that's too many. You probably need like 8 to 10 for a group max.
Yeah, that's what they kind of say in most of the literature is like 10 max on most of them.
Yeah, it's too,
maybe, psychoeducational, maybe you can get away with a bit more, but not much even in those
not
standards.
Much more. And especially if it's a like fixed time group where you're working on, say it's, I don't know, whatever it is, if, can be grief and loss, or it can be like, divorce support, whatever, the group's going to go through things, like there's this whole, when I took group therapy, it was like, Yalom wrote a book about group, like what groups go through. They kind of do go through the stages together.
Storming, the norming. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And couples can do that too, a little bit.
Okay. So there is some overlap.
A little bit. Yeah. But you have, you're wanting, when it's individual, you can be, obviously, like, there's your focus. But when it's couples or groups, you want to make sure that you're, everyone thinks that you're, they're as important as everybody else. They don't always think that, but that's kind of what your goal is. Yeah.
Okay. I know you kind of talked a little bit about, doing the intake assessment, things of that nature. As far as any type of diagnosis, is there anything like that placed on couples when they come in after an assessment? Or
so you have to, if you're using insurance, you're going to have to, and there's a code for, I think they call it family work. So it's going to have to go under somebody's name, but the coding is different. Like, so that person could do individual counseling too. So you would have to give a diagnosis for it, but I usually go on the lesser side of things, unless they come in with, I'll say a more, what they used to call like a more serious diagnosis or diagnosis.
Start very low unless it's
exactly,
and then kind of they might need a little bit more help, need a little bit more of a stronger diagnosis,
right? And maybe they're the one that called in, so it's under their name,
Yeah.
Now,
Go ahead, Kev.
Oh no, I appreciate it, Josh. So we talk about couples counseling, right? And we know that domestic violence, suicide awareness prevention, substance use, even psychiatry, right? People,
Mhm.
there's this huge stigma, culturally, individually, family wise, generational wise, right? There's still this huge stigma in all of those areas. Do you feel or do you find that there is the same level or similar level, maybe higher level, lower level of stigma and shame as it relates to couples counseling? And how do you deal with that if you do? Because I mean, I'm not a couples counselor, so
Yeah. No, I mean, definitely. I mean, it can be. I mean, culturally, definitely. There might be some couples that it's just not in their culture, you know, it's really frowned upon. They don't want anyone to know. So that can be something. Or people, yeah, I think people, and this is why I think, back to using it as a last resort, they feel like it's, it means like, oh my gosh, we're going to be divorced, or we're doing something wrong, or and it doesn't, like there are plenty of happy couples that come into couples counseling. It's like I said, it's always better to get it before it becomes a bigger issue, and before there's years and years of the same thing, because then you have to like unpack all those years, and it's hard to change, hard to change your ways. So, and you're also bringing in, maybe you didn't have the best role models when it comes to relationships. So you're bringing all that into it too. And if your parent, like that's so
Healing
yeah,
it.
like try to break that down and make everyone feel like there's no judgment.
Does anyone else have that one moment where everything feels too overwhelming to handle? Fortunately, there are therapeutic resources where you will learn the skills necessary to bring clarity and focus amidst chaos, making everything feel manageable again. At Mindfully Me Counseling, we guide you towards clarity and calm with personalized therapy. Embrace your self-care today. Visit mindfullymecounselingplc.com to learn more. We sponsor the One Moment podcast. They meet weekly to discuss critical topics related to mental health, raising awareness on various topics such as substance use, suicide, trauma, family, and more. Visit onemoment.chain.box to learn more about the podcast and to be connected to additional resources. Subscribe to their social media channels for more information.
I'm Trevor, and I'm not a licensed clinical professional, but everything that in the discussion that I've listened to so far is pretty much applicable in things that I personally am going through right now. So
Okay.
once again, I'm proud to have asked to be part of this podcast, number one, because it's helping me, but at the same time, I get the ability to help others. And just what you've described, especially with the couples counseling, because I was like, oh, I'm a macho guy and I don't need counseling. And the situational relationship problem that I was going through is what drove me to doing things that I stopped doing. And I became a correctional professional because of it. I showed other people how to not drink, and inside I was a volunteer in New Mexico for about 18 months before I got my foot in the door and became a correctional officer. And then when I moved here to Colorado, I worked at a specific facility that is designed for mentally disadvantaged folks. And so
Okay.
the the behaviors that I had to address are pretty intense. The intensity is not so much so in the normal, regular society. It's really problematic to your
Sure.
safety. So for me to advance in that part of what you just described, parents and societal issues and stigmas that you get taught to believe that you don't need this, your machismo sense, and all these
Mm.
things are exactly the reasons why I've been against it. But I wish I wasn't such an advanced thinker, because my thinking is different than my partner's. So, and that's what drew me to drink. Anyways, so things are really really awesome with this conversation. And I apologize for being late. I was helping my cancer friend because he's not capable of doing some simple yard things, and he's helping me out through my things, and I'm helping him. He was my AA sponsor,
Oh, great.
and I took my other AA sponsor to the airport this morning. So I'm even though I'm not in the best way, the ability to still cognitively have the ability to be with this podcast and listening to professionals like you is really strengthening for me personally. And I don't want to get too personal, but at the same time, like, once again, I think I said something about peeling the onion, and
Mhm.
that's exactly what is going on in this conversation. And I'm glad that you decided to make us, part of your journey as well. Thank you for
Oh,
being here.
great. Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you. No, that's great.
And what you're talking about is just completely like right on point. We like that here at the One Moment Podcast, because that's our mission, is to stop stigmas and stereotypical societally, culturally, religiously. It could be just like all these worldwide things that we have to deal with are subjects that we discuss. And I feel like I'm actually being very productive as down low as I am. So it's very helpful to me. And I'm just thankful that you're our guest today, and for letting me be a little bit late. That was not anything I intended, but thank you for being here with us today.
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I apologize for interrupting too, but I'm gonna mute up and continue on, you professionals. And there's no disrespect there at all. That's awesome, and I love it that Josh is like, right. He's right on point too. He's a good guy. I can't wait to meet him one day.
Appreciate that, Trev. So yeah, I have to ask this question
Sure.
because as time changed and the what you see in society changes as well. Have you ever worked with any triples or people who were not in the monogamistic style relationships, but were more in like relationships like multiple partners?
Generally, no. That's not. I mean, there are therapists that specialize in that. I've had couples who were wanting to explore that. And then that was maybe like earlier on. And so I didn't feel like I had enough expertise in that area, enough training. So I referred out. But I know therapists that do work with that. And so, and even, yeah, I even have, I did have a referral, but that was a while ago. But yeah, so, but it is more, I don't want to say it's more, I think it was always there. I think now people will be more open when they call for therapy to mention that. Then like what I'm thinking of years ago was like the couple, it may take like 4 or 5 sessions of the couple to say that, and now people might be more open in the beginning to say, hey, this is what's going on, or.
Okay, so they don't feel the judgment that
Exactly.
a lot of people perceived used to be there with
exactly. Him. Right. Exactly.
Okay. All right. So they were just able to, feel like they were more.
What's going on? Yeah. And I do feel like people are more willing to share. Before it was, I would get a lot of calls too, even for individual folks, like, I'm calling for my friend, or I'm calling for this person or that person. And I'm like, okay, well, and I would appreciate that they're doing that for them, but I want to, like, it's okay. I can, if they'll talk to me, I'll talk to them. But yeah. So I don't get those calls anymore as much, which is a good thing. People are calling for themselves, which is good.
Yeah, that's always nice. You don't have that barrier or that perceived stigma there, so it just kind of allows people to seek services out and
exactly
openly, and if they feel like they need it.
Sure.
So, okay, so just hypothetical, me and my partner are going through something, and we're thinking maybe a couples counselor might help. What would you recommend for us to ask that couples counselor before we find someone? During the first sessions, like,
sure,
we've never been through this before, we don't know what to ask, what to look for. So can you kind of take me a little bit through that?
Sure. I would say, you want to see, like, if they use really any of the modalities in couples counseling are gonna can probably help, but maybe see like do they focus on a certain one, like maybe it can be if you feel like there are issues from childhood, or there's things that are having patterns that don't really understand, you might want someone with a more like psychodynamic approach to kind of explore that, because that's more of like the unconscious behaviors that you're bringing into the relationship and things you're doing that are you're not even really sure. It's just the dynamic between the two of you. But if you're feeling like I just want a better connection, we don't seem to have a bond anymore. Maybe you want someone who's more like trained in more like emotionally focused therapy. A lot of people, or maybe you'll say to them like, what's your experience with like managing conflict? We're fighting all the time. How do you do that? So yeah, a lot of people sometimes will, with the internet, they'll go online and say, do you follow this or that? So you can ask them that too, specifics, what their experience is like, maybe how they run their sessions. Some couples therapists will, I personally like to always meet with a couple, because there is the thinking, there are some therapists who they will do an intake with just like one half of the couple one week and one half the next week. And that's fine too. Some people want that, they want to come. To me, I'm not a secret keeper. I don't want to keep secrets, so I don't want someone to disclose something, but there is a school of thought that helps too. So some people will say like, I only want a female, I only want a male counselor, which some couples like that too. So I always say like, if you're whatever's going to get your partner in the door, like if your partner is a little bit, they want to work on things, but they're nervous or they're feeling some anxiety, which happens a lot, like whatever's going to get them in the door. So if like their one condition is, I want, a psychodynamic therapist, who's trained classically in psychodynamic theory, or I want a male therapist, or I want a female therapist, or I want to do in person, that's fine. Like if that's going to ease their anxiety a little bit, you can make that. It's not really a concession, but for lack of a better word, maybe it might help them a little bit, kind of get them in the door, ease their mind a little bit, and they have some more ownership if they're feeling a little apprehensive.
Does anyone else have that one tool that makes building a website a breeze? In an era driven by digital change, WebHash is the indispensable tool that holds the key to effortless website creation. Create websites that endure, defy censorship, and bypass any single point of failure. As cutting-edge technology redefines reality, seize the power to build beyond limits. Join the Web3 revolution now and forge paths others can only dream of. Visit our site today and build your legacy. Building my own space on the web was always a grind until I hit up WebHash. Their no-code builder is my ace. It's swift and solid. It's like rocking a digital fortress that's immune to the typical shutdowns. Level up your web presence without stress. Ready to stake your claim in the digital realm? Dive into WebHash today, connect your Web3 wallet, and get started. They have multiple subscription plans, from a free version to a lifetime subscription. Check them out today at webhash.com. Most importantly, they sponsor the One Moment podcast, helping to raise awareness to critical topics in the healthcare field. Our official website was built using the WebHash platform. Throughout the projects that the One Moment movement built on WebHash, they stood behind and supported it all the way. Sign up and start building your website today. Don't forget to visit onemoment.chain.box and subscribe to our social media channels.
Now, Miss Jennifer, does that mean that specifically there's a psychological based set of training that has to be gone through before you can deal with it, couples like that, or like Josh was talking about, people that into intimacy issues? Is there always like a specific part of, because I'm not a college educated person. I have some college, community college credits, but I don't have any college education. So from my point of view, I'm just thinking about everything you're talking about and what Josh is referring to. Does that mean necessarily that there's an amount of training and I totally get training because I
Yeah, sure.
myself. And does that mean that you have to get a certification in each specific behavior problem?
No, you wouldn't have to, as long as you're licensed by the state to practice independently. That's the biggest thing, is having your state licensure. And if
Okay.
you're virtual, making sure your client is in the same state as you. They can't be on vacation
Great. Well,
unless licensed in wherever they are. But sometimes it just helps to talk to, because of feeling anxiety, the couple, and with a therapist, maybe it just helps to maybe do like a 10 or 15-minute phone call just to say, like, what's your approach?
right.
How are we going to do this? Just to ease their mind, like, and so I'll tell people, like, okay, we'll come in, maybe I'll send paperwork ahead of time, or I'll say, like, jot down a couple things you want, just maybe jot down a couple things you want to make sure you bring out in the first session, so we know what we're what we're dealing with. But really, it's more to, if a couple is anxious, I try to ease their mind on, like, how it's going to go, so they're not thinking it's going to go they don't have any, like, preconceived notions in their mind.
Right.
Now, I do have a question, okay, for those who are not, like myself, licensed, or as far as like in family and marriage therapy, or those who are independently licensed but don't practice couples and LMFT, right, or marriage and family therapy.
Yeah.
And then also for the general public, right? So, and I think Josh and I have been taking turns asking the same question. It feels like, because I'm about to ask it.
Yeah.
So how, like, in certain states, like here in North Carolina, we have a licensed clinical addiction specialist, right? We also have mental health licensed counselors who can specialize in sex therapy, addiction therapy. Maybe they specialize in DBT and they only serve borderline, right?
Okay, sure.
People diagnosed with borderline diagnoses, or maybe they're got the certification and their whole focus is on your more severe mentally, I think it's now the new term is severe mental illness, right? SMI. And that might include schizophrenia. That might include high risk relapsers who have relapsed 100 times in the last 30 years, right? And so we have those various specialties, right? In couples counseling, is there any such thing as, like, a specialty? Like, you have a couples counselor and they specialize in substance use, or you have a couples counselor and they specialize with, I don't know really how to word it because I'm not a couples counselor.
Yeah, you can have people that are, like, Gottman trained, like in that method. There's other things, like certificates you can get. I mean, you need to have your independent licensure to, you need to have your license to practice. Yeah, and then you can go for, like, people can do trauma training. You can do different things, couples wise, well, and you always have to maintain your license, you always have to do trainings, obviously, but you can get, like, certificates and things, sure, workshops to do. And what I find are those things, I mean, it's great to have those things, and I kind of pull from all different ones depending on the couple, because everybody's different, so I think there's good parts in each one. And sometimes you don't have a long time with a couple too, like, you might be, so you also want to maybe playing against the clock a little bit, so you might want to go back to things, but there might be resistance, or maybe that's something they need to do more individual wise, so you're more, like, focusing on shorter term things and they can return someday, to so that's something that I kind of follow a more eclectic approach, I guess. But certainly you can get certificates in all different kinds of modalities. Sure. That and I think the more, I think a lot of therapists will pull from different ones. Like I said, to give that more, like, eclectic approach.
So does
But
that
some
kind
are more classically trained. I mean, some do follow one method, I guess. Yeah. So that's important if that's important to the couple, you'd want to ask that, sure.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Sorry, Josh, I had to steal your question, brother.
I think what I've read in research is the longer a counselor is practicing independently, the more they start to use modalities from multiple pools of thought, that eclectic kind of treatment plan where they're, okay, this couple, this patient could really benefit from this, and I've used this in the past, so I'm going to grab this, but they could also benefit for something over here. And just kind of
Exactly.
measure that together for that person-centered approach.
Right. Exactly. And working together with them, you have to really start where the client is, or the couple, or the client and the couple is. Like, you can't, I will always open every session, a lot of therapists do, with like, how are you doing? How's your week been? Or if it's been longer than that, how's it? Because, at the end, I always tell folks, like, at the end of the session, we can say, okay, we're going to pick up there next time. But if they had a fight with their boss or their best friend, the night before, or they're fighting with their kids, and they come in, they're not going to be in the mood to discuss what happened in their childhood. You got to discuss that fight.
Yeah.
So, you got to be ready to go where they are. Like the other things that can wait. You got to start where they are, and then you might get to the goal, but you have to be flexible.
Nice. Yeah, so you don't come in busting around the gate. Tell me about that trauma. We need to kind of see, hey, like, anything you want to talk about before we kind of continue on where we were last week.
Sure. How's the week been? What's going on? Right. Sure. It's all related. Yeah.
Yeah. As far as your own personal modalities that you are kind of drawn to and things of that nature, did you find that was more because of supervised training when you were working towards like independent licensure, or were these more just, no, as soon as I read about it, I'm drawn to this kind of modality and I want to pursue it?
Yeah. So when I was, coming up the world, like, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, was like the buzzword.
Yeah.
Like,
doesn't matter what they're coming in for, they're leaving with some CBT.
Yeah, exactly. So changing the negative thoughts and behaviors, I mean, that kind of encompasses a lot. But I also will do, which I think is more of like emotionally focused therapy, or Gottman method, where you try to increase the communication, but the actively listening is a big one. And so you might do like a model thing. So I might say to them, like, okay, you need to say to your partner, because it's important not only what, how we say it, right? So, phrases like, I think what you're saying is this, like I statements. I think what you're saying is this, how you're feeling, not you statements, which is a good exercise too, which can get, and it also puts, they start to do the work too. Because someday the couple therapist isn't going to be there. Yeah.
They're taking responsibility for their own.
Exactly.
I'm imagine if they kind of see that works a little bit in session, and if they're starting to, essentially blame game or point fingers, they're like, okay, let's take a step back if they can do that and be like, this worked in session. Let me just focus on me.
Exactly. Little tools like
we'll
that.
kind of figure it out. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. The I statements are a big one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you pretty much have to structure your vernacular ability and your grammatical approach to whatever the base is of the therapy session, in such a way that each individual is going to be open or willing to be able to receive the information that you're helping to coach them through or to work with them, correct?
Absolutely. Yes. And they have to buy into it. They have to see that it's going to work.
Right. And
yeah,
you have to kind of walk a fine razor's edge to make sure that your approach is building them to a point where they're willing to do what they're asking the therapy for in the first place. Is that correct?
Exactly. Definitely.
And something that really got my attention too is the different modalities. To me, that means that you have maybe certifications in different modalities, and that has to be achieved through your education. Is that correct?
Well, you can do it after you get your licensure, so when you start practicing, I mean, I think it's probably when someone is just coming out of school. I worked primarily with like the younger population and individuals, and then you kind of build on that knowledge base, and then I kind of went for additional, certifications while and you're also keeping your licensure intact, getting your continuing ed credits too. But the more experience you have, and then you also, most therapists when they start out you have to go to supervision with another therapist or someone.
Gotcha.
So which is
Like-
also a form of training.
Yeah, that's like if you want to be a carpenter, you got to work with a master carpenter for a while.
Exactly.
Or
Sure.
electrician, or a HVAC guy, whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I did plenty of that. So
Sure.
these are simple concepts, but at the same time, I was always afraid of going to college because I didn't want to fail. And I always felt like I couldn't afford it because I don't come from a family that has money. And so I didn't know what my resources were to be able to get through these. I currently was supplied with free courses for the University of Colorado that are designed specifically for BA, MA, and PhD level individuals. And I've got a GED in 1991, and then in 1993 I got my high school diploma, the one both my brother and I graduated. And I was told if I would have been valedictorian if I would have stayed all 4 years of my high school at that facility. But either way, I was on the honor roll, and so my thinking has always been very advanced. My grandmother used to say that I was too smart for my own good, and I realized at this stage of the game, at my point now, physically I can't do the stuff that I used to do anymore, and so having the capability and the cognitive recognition to understand concepts of like what Josh and you and Kevin are all talking about, modalities and different uh, approaches to helping people with all these issues. Number one, it's a psychological thing or a psychiatrical thing that you have to be able to walk that fine line and help them in so that they get the therapy that's necessary to help them address the issues that they need help with. And I just think it's a really cool it's a really cool opportunity just to have conversation with somebody as much tenure as you've got. It's pretty cool conversation. And I'm kind of weird. I feel a little bit embarrassed that I came in partway through because I thought we were getting started at 3 and not earlier, but that's okay. I'm on a different time zone than you guys.
Right,
So
you are different. Yeah, sure. You're on Mountain Time. Yeah, right. Yeah.
but yeah, it's really a good conversation, and I like how it's also helping Josh, because he's in school and he's like the dude that's going for it. I'm proud of him for what he's accomplishing.
I appreciate that, Trev. So kind of just to get back a little bit,
Mhm.
well, I have to ask the question first. Did you ever thought about going back for your doctorate?
I have, but it's such a long process. I had a friend that did it. And I did grad school. But it's such a commitment, and it's school is a commitment anyway, but at this point I think really your doctorate in therapy, if you're going to teach, you need your doctorate. If you're going to be a professor, if you're going to do testing, you need a PhD. Therapy, really, if you're going to do therapy, which is what I wanted to do, you would need like clinically wise, there's the PsyD. I think that takes like 7 years, and I just wanted, I wanted more of it. I wanted to travel, live, have kids, like just and it's hard to do that. Like I said, I have a friend that did it and she taught for a while, but I just wasn't ready to immerse myself, in that life again.
Kind of happy
Once I got my master's, I was kind of, once I
doing
started
doctor wasn't enough.
yeah,
Not enough motivation.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Someone calling me doctor was not. I'm cool with not being called doctor.
Yeah.
when
I
I
was
was
curious.
working at land surveying in Lower Alabama, the real LA, I was given a nickname called Dr. Trevorkian, because if there was a living thing, as far as like a plant or something like that, and I
Yeah.
don't like rattlesnakes and water moccasins, but when I was surveying, they called me that because I killed the things that were in the direction of the laser instrumentation, because we had to go down that angle and distance. So it's just really interesting because I have the capability of taking coursework that is specifically designed for professionals, and there are 3 courses through the University of Colorado, and I'm still, with minimal education as I do have, still able to, grasp a hold of the concepts and the therapy methods, and all just, it's really a blessing, like one of the best blessings I've ever had, just to continue learning. And the doctor reference was specific because it was said that you have to be a doctor to be able to teach, but from a regular person, a non-licensed person's perspective that's thinking about things like this, how come that necessarily might be a thing that you're not able to teach someone? Just the fact that you don't have the certification, or
Feeling lost or alone, struggling with unbearable trauma or addiction. Every day feels heavier than the day before. The weight of unaddressed emotions and problems can leave you paralyzed. On the One Moment podcast, we are aligned with the vision and mission of the Place to Heal. Founded in Sanford, North Carolina, the Place to Heal is a growing multi-specialty mental health and substance use practice dedicated to facilitating healing and personal development. Our team of compassionate clinicians are committed to providing evidence-based therapeutic interventions tailored to each individual's unique journey. We are passionate about empowering our clients to overcome challenges and achieve emotional wellness. The Place to Heal hosts and sponsors the One Moment podcast. Visit onemoment.chain.box to learn more about our podcast and to be connected to the Place to Heal. Follow us on social media for more content.
Well, I was talking about like being a professor. Like getting your doctorate would. A lot of people get it to if they want to teach and be a professor. You can have, like you can work as an adjunct. When I was in school, there are adjuncts that professors that would, they would have a private practice and then teach. But I mean, the PhD, to get a PhD,
a lot of work.
to just in solo practice, really wouldn't be worth it. I mean, that would be more if you wanted to be a professor, write book, like be published as a professor.
Sure.
That's kind of the yeah.
Okay.
That's more so. And then, like I said, there's a clinical, you can become a clinical psychologist and get your PsyD, but that takes, I think it's like at least 7 years. And that's more clinically trained, but you can, and some people do that. It's just, I think, I don't know, I haven't looked at the statistics, but I think like 90% of mental health is clinical social workers provide like 90% of mental health.
Okay.
And the other now, a lot of states now are doing like licensed professional counselors. More like Pennsylvania, where I am now, you had to have, in order to be an LPC in practice, you had to have a PhD. They changed it where you can get a master's in counseling, and then they kind of made LMFTs, LPCs, and LCSWs all equal, which is great, because for a time that wasn't. So things may have changed, but regardless, like even if it's 80% now, it's a master's level licensed clinician,
Right.
is doing the mental health.
So I wasn't aware of where you're located. Recently, we had a discourse with someone that provided me an avenue to get a certification, and this is an amazing thing. I don't know if maybe it was you, Kevin, because you said you went down, you were going to video Kensington Avenue, but it was a really problematic thing. And I've seen some of the videos on. But one of the biggest things that I got out of the deal was a free course to help wound care treatment for people that are going through this xylazine and fentanyl mix thing. And I was like, oh
Okay.
my God, why are these? So through the state of Pennsylvania, I took the online coursework. And so if I was ever having to address someone with all these massive wounds on them because of their substance use, I can help them. And it was a free thing to do. So I'm like, why not do it? I've got it. And I actually have a certificate from the state of Pennsylvania that says that I can help somebody get the resources they need for their wounds through behavior like that. So
Oh, that's great.
yeah, and I was amazed. Some of the videos that I've ever seen about the Kensington Avenue culture were just, I was astounded. I didn't know that people could actually have a desire to make themselves that destructive to themselves. And so it
Yeah.
was eye opening. So um yeah, so the teaching thing is a pretty cool concept, because just having the conversations a lot of the times that we have on these episodes is literally teaching me, and my ability to bring all this stuff in is like building me up. My behavioral therapist is she has a certification called she's an NACC, so I believe that means a nationally certified clinical professional. Is that correct?
I'm not familiar with that one. I don't know. I mean, that sounds right, but I've never heard that one before, the acronym before.
Yeah, it's
Um,
more on the professional counseling or mental health counseling side.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
right. Uh, anyways, so that was why I was kind of drawn to that specific person in that office,
Okay.
because she had that accreditation, and I knew that that was somebody that was advanced. And it's weird because some of the things that I talk about with her, it's like she's redirecting my own thinking for me. So it doesn't mean that I'm unwilling to take her advice, but some things seems to be, some of the issues that she seems to address kind of makes me a little bit hesitant, because I feel like I'm cognitive aware of a lot of the things she's talking about, and I don't seem to have the resources that I need to do them, but I'm still moving forward. She actually gave me the Colorado, it's called COPA, and it's for becoming a peer recovery specialist.
Okay.
And so for me, that would be an amazing accomplishment to be able to do that through the issues that I deal with myself. But still, I'm still able to help other people. And that kind of gets on the existential humanistic part, you know, being able to help other people while I'm going through the difficulty that I might be.
Sure.
So I'm using it like every resource that I can possibly get, especially Josh and Kevin and Ruben and people like you are like literally teaching me to have a set of skills that I didn't really think about before. And so I'm blessed, and it's a gift. I don't mean to be so uh, digging into the emotional part of it or the thinking part of it, but at the same time, I'm like, whoa, these things are really just amazing to me, and I'm
Yeah.
thankful and grateful, especially for you being our guest today, Miss Jennifer.
Oh, thank you.
Well, and that's why, people like yourself, Ruben, myself, Ruben, listen to me, Trevor. I know, right? Ruben's on my mind right now. Well, people like yourself, Trev, Josh, and even for the audience, even for myself too. Since we've been doing this, I've learned so much from so many people. I mean, shoot, I learned about TMS, back second week of May. Never even heard of TMS till then.
Mm-hmm.
And TMS has been out for 20 years. Never read about it in the book.
Yeah.
So that's what I love about doing these things. And but anyways, and thank you for sharing that, Trev. And of course, thank you, Miss Jen and Josh. I appreciate
Sure.
you even hosting this, man. Like, you've done a phenomenal job. So I've got to call you out, brother. You've done a phenomenal job So
Please,
thank you.
please forgive me for interrupting. You just said something called TMS that I don't know what that is. Something was said also about CBT. What is CBT?
Oh, cognitive behavioral therapy.
Oh, that's interesting right there. Maybe that's one of my problems. Too cognitive.
Well, yeah, well, it's a modality. It's people still use it, but it was really big in like the I guess early 2000s. It was like a buzzword back then.
It was the shiny new potion.
Yeah, exactly. exactly. I need to do CBT because I heard it that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Miss Jennifer, we're gonna have to kind of close this out here pretty soon,
Sure.
but I do have one last question.
Sure.
And this kind of goes back to looking for a couples counselor and not really knowing, like general public, not really knowing who to go to, things like that.
Sure.
Your recommendation on telehealth versus in person for couples therapy. Do you see one works better than the other? Are they both the same? Obviously, the needs associated with it are different and the convenience.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, there are things, I'll be honest, there are things I miss about in person that you probably don't get telehealth wise, just like little things you might notice someone, body language is a big one when you're in person, especially with couples, how they sit, where they're sitting, but at the same time, I don't think I haven't had any less success with anyone. So if you're open to both, I think really that if you find a therapist that you want to work with, I think that's probably the important thing. You want to have that connection, Telehealth obviously can be more convenient, probably for you, especially if you have kids, or maybe with your schedules, or you can both Zoom in from different locations sometimes too. You don't have to, that can be something too. I've had people, like couples, come in on their lunch breaks. It's ideal to be together, but if that's not possible, sometimes, it can be hard to find a therapist. So I always tell folks, like, if you want to reach out for referrals, like social media, a lot of times on community pages, people will post anonymously. Can anyone recommend a good therapist, couples therapist?
Yeah, see that about once a week on the local one. Yeah.
You can do that. Yeah, like a lot of therapists are on Psychology Today. Your insurance, really, it's going to take some effort, and you probably have, keep a record, who you called, if they've gotten back to you, what's their availability, all of those, kind of have it ready, your questions ready for them. And then if you can't talk to someone before the session, that's okay. You'll get a feel the first couple times you meet with them if it's a good fit.
Okay. Cool. Well, for all our listeners, is there a way that we can, or that you can kind of promote yourself? Are you on the Psychology Today?
I'm on Psychology Today. Yeah, my business is Crossroads Counseling Services, and I'm in Pennsylvania. And I'm on Psychology Today, Facebook, Instagram. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for just being
Thanks
able
for having me.
Chatting with us. We really appreciate it.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Kev, Trevor, any last questions?
I got 2 questions for you.
Okay.
And these are the final 2. Are you ready for them?
I'm ready.
Let me do a quick question before you put the last. I know what you're getting ready to say. To the best of my knowledge, you guys were just talking about telehealth. Is that referred to as TBH? No, I'm seriously.
Oh no, just through like a Zoom or Google Meet or whatever, through video. Yeah.
And the reason I ask is because one of my courses through the University of Colorado is called TBH usage.
Oh, I guess is it like telehealth, behavioral health? Is that what it stands for?
I believe.
Okay. Yeah. So that would be it. Yeah.
Am I still echoing?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So, look, I started laughing because I haven't heard that question in forever. So, that's a great question for people who don't know what telehealth is. So, thank you for asking that, Trev. Look, two questions. Okay. One is, when people watch this, what is one thing you want them to take away? And then give us a call to action. Give people a call to action.
So just that if you've been thinking about it for a while, make the call. It's okay. It's something that, especially with couples counseling, it's, better to do it instead of waiting on it. Make the call. It may take a while to even get in with someone. So I think a lot of people don't realize that. It's not like you pick up the phone and they're going to see it tomorrow or tonight. It may take a week or two. It can take even longer than that. So if you're thinking about it, make the call, schedule the appointment. You're not signing up for any long-term commitment, but just, it's important to go. And, like I said, if you've been thinking about it, and see if you connect with a therapist. And if you want to have somebody by your side while you make the call, that's fine too. Sometimes that helps people. But yeah, make the, you're worth it. You have to think about, you're worth it. If you're with couples, the relationship's worth it. And a call to action, I don't know. I think that you have to, it's a good question. A call to really just, I guess, make that call. That would be it. I don't know. Sorry.
That's what I laughed because that was literally, I was like, I think that is the call.
That's call to action,
Yeah. Make the call.
Yeah.
No, I love it.
Or send
I love
the email.
it because
you can send the email. You don't even have to call. You can send an email. Yeah.
Right. No,
Do
and
whatever it
Probably
takes.
text.
yeah.
You can probably text.
Yep. No, I love it. Thank you.
In the heart of the city, a vision was born, not just a piece of clothing, but a movement. Vital Apparel reflects not just the raw edge of the streets, but the spirit of innovation to bring about change in mental health worldwide. It's more than a style, it's a statement, a blend of comfort with an attitude made for those who refuse to be average. Embrace the culture, ignite your passion, and wear the revolution. Discover your new favorite piece today and be part of something larger than life. Visit our link now at vtlapparel.com to grab your next outfit. Use promo code ONEMOMENT to get 15% off your order. Why support us? The founders of Vital Apparel, Hung Dao and Alex Kozub, sought out to raise awareness, seeking to change the stigma around mental health. 5% of their profits are donated to Brain Research Foundation, furthering the research in mental health. Vital Apparel sponsors the One Moment podcast. We partnered with one another so that together we can make a global impact on mental health, substance use, and suicide, saving lives one moment at a time around the world. Help us break the stigma. Visit onemoment.chain.box to learn more about our podcast and to connect with us on social media. Don't forget to subscribe to our channels to stay up to date on our episodes. Subscribe now. Some photos in this ad were created by Grok.